It took some time for me as a parent to really acknowledge what was going on with my son when he was very young. Um, it was not until he was not formally diagnosed till he was 3. I was aware of what was going on before that time, but there were quite a few months and months when I was just in denial about what was happening. But I think that was fine, and that's where I needed to be at that time. It was difficult for my husband and I as a couple because we came to our awareness of what was wrong with Kip at different times. And so he was more aware of it earlier than I was and really could have used my support, but I couldn't be supportive because I was still in denial. So that was difficult for both of us. But then eventually we came to terms and we were both on the same page and were able to support each other. So I would say being patient and allowing people to come to this awareness as they are ready. I think it was also important for us to really access any and all resources, not just professionals, but maybe a neighbor who is concerned, or someone from church who we don't normally talk to but who expresses a concern seeing me looking sad in church or something. That happened for me, and that made a nice relationship. So being open to those things, allowing yourself to let people care for you and support you, it's not always the best idea to be really tough.
To tell families and other siblings, I think is that it's important to really express, don't feel as a family or as a sibling that you have to put on a face and act like it's the easiest thing ever. Do talk about if things are going to take longer, don't be afraid of saying, this is what went into this, and especially in terms of the child's education. And I think that you really have to make sure as a family that if there's services that need to be done, whether they're at schools or they're outside services through your state, to get things written down by your doctor to make sure that you tell, this is what we see at home, and take copious notes if you have to and things like that, because people aren't going to see when it's an invisible disability the amount that goes into all of that.
Well, my parents didn't moderate things for me. They didn't, put stickers on the laundry machine or anything like that to help me find which. I just had to learn everything on my own. And I really appreciate that because that gives me more opportunity to figure out how I can adapt to that situation instead of being taught how to adapt, if you know what I mean. So I'm a little bit more outgoing in that sense, and I appreciate that.
I was born in the 80s, and there was no real understanding in my family of disability. There had been no exposure to people with visual impairments or blindness prior to me, and I consider that a blessing because they raised me the way they'd raise anybody else. I just ran into a lot more stuff. They knew that I was going to experience adversity, I was going to experience difficulty. They didn't know to what extent it was going to occur, but they wanted to raise me as normally as possible so that I would have the faculty to deal with it. I got a bike when I was a kid. I rode around. I fell. I scraped my knee. I had to go to the hospital, get stitches. My father said I was a dope because I didn't watch where I was going, and it's true. I didn't watch where I was going. And the fact that the disability was not the focal point of my growing up is what made it possible for me to adapt to it. I had to learn to do a lot of the adaptations on my own as far as adapting things for my own visual needs. There was a lot of troubleshooting, and I became an expert in accessibility troubleshooting, figuring out how to make things work for people, how to make them work for me, and then also farther relate that out to how could others use those same skills.
So the open line of communication, I think, is so important within the family and friends, and I feel very comfortable in talking to them about some conversation that might not be just for cocktails, seriously. I mean, these are tough conversations to have, but it's a reality. It's things that I have to deal with. Again, if I go to a family function, I have to think about if their bathroom is accessible, so I have to go to the washroom before I go to this party, and during the party, how about if I have to go to the bathroom all of a sudden, I can't even get into the doorway. So I think it's part of my responsibility to know what the lay of the land is when I go to different family events. If it is accessible, or if I have to go to the bathroom, I'm going to have to go to a restaurant and stop by a restaurant and use the facilities there. And so I do let my family know or ask them questions about that accessibility, because it's not only on them, it's also my responsibility too. I still, I have the pocket cell phone. It is 2013. There's many places that are accessible, but if you go to a new place, you don't know what the lay of the land is. It's always good to call on the phone. Again, that open line of communication.
I think the important thing for families certainly is communication, being able to talk about the disability openly and with fun, as it sometimes is, oftentimes is. Certainly amongst family, extended family members also need the education and the information so that they know how to deal with their grandchild or their niece and nephew. Good communication between parents and the school system is important. Understanding that both people, both sides, really want what's best for the student. There may be disagreements about how that's best provided, but if you continue to work within an environment of trust and cooperation, usually the goals can be met without much difficulty.